Mom shoved my face in ice water, saying she was washing away my poor aura. "You're from the countryside," she said. "A dirt stench brings bad luck to Yao Yao." The icy water stabbed like needles, my lungs about to explode. Xiao lounged on the sofa, hugging a heater and eating chocolate. In my past life, such washing caused. Later, during apocalyptic cold, thrown into the basement, I huddled in a corner at -60 degrees, watching my mother take the last half piece of red-hot coal from the fire pot. Su ran. Yao Yao's health is frail, and the cold affects her. As the elder sister, let her have the coal. Mother, wrapped in a mink coat, smiled, not at me. A blood transfusion tube was taped to my wrist. Blood flowed into the warm room next door, Su Yao's bedroom, the fake heiress. 3 months into the apocalyptic cold, the Su family turned me into Su Yao's walking blood bank. The door opened a crack, and father's voice came through. "Hurry! Yao Yao finished soup. She needs coal to warm her feet." Drowsiness from hypothermia hit me as Su Yao laughed. "Thanks, Mom and Dad. My sister is amazing, sacrificing anything for me." I glared at the shut door, taking my breath amid regret and despair. Su ran. "Stop pretending. It's just 400 cubic centimeters of blood. Already giving up?" A sharp scolding pierced my ears. My body jolted, and I opened my eyes. Blinding fluorescent lights. Stench of disinfectant. Before me is no longer a frost-covered basement, but a warm, lit VIP ward. A sharp pain pierces my arm. I look down. I see a needle in my vein, transferring blood to Su Yao. Her face glows. The doctor said Yao Yao is a bit anemic. "Prove yourself by donating blood." My mother, impatient, urges the nurse, increase the flow rate. Yao Yao needs to get ready for a banquet. This scene mirrors my past life. We're just 3 months from the apocalypse. I didn't die. Reborn, I raise my hand and grab the needle as my mother and nurse watch in shock. Su Yao exclaims in shock. "What? TSK. I forcefully rip it out. The needle is torn away. Blood gushes out, staining the bed sheets and splattering the ancestral jade pendant. No one notices the red glow flashing across the pendant. Su ran. "Are you crazy?" My mother screams, rushing toward me to hit me. I glare at her. "Get lost." Her raised hand freezes midair, intimidated by my murderous glare. "You dare tell me to get lost?" "I'm your mother," she says, trembling. "A country bumpkin has no manners. Just a little blood. Yao Yao is your sister, and the Su family raised you all these years. What's wrong with asking you to contribute?" "Contribute?" I grabbed gauze nearby, pressed it on the wound, and sneered. "They brought me back for an arranged marriage. When that failed, they made me a blood bank. Is this Su family gratitude for raised?" The hospital door swung open, and my suited-up father stormed in. "What's this noise?" "Mr. Gu is about to arrive to pick up Yao Yao. Don't embarrass us in front of him." His eyes fell on the bloodstains on the floor, and he glared at me in disgust. Su ran. "What nonsense are you pulling? In my past life, I tried hard to please these parents, humiliating myself for them. And what did I get? Left to freeze and drained of my blood." I stood up, though weak. My back stayed straight. "I'm not apologizing." I met my father's calculating gaze with a challenge. "If you care about Su Yao, then fine. I'm done being the eldest daughter of the Su family." The room fell silent. Joy flashed in Su Yao's eyes, but she covered her mouth. "Sister, don't say something you'll regret. Mom and Dad are doing this for your—" I cut off her performance and faced Dad. "I'm cutting ties. Here and now." He froze, then scoffed. Su ran. "Think reverse psychology will scare me? Outside the Su family, you can't even feed yourself. That's my problem." I picked up a pen and paper and wrote, "Sign this, and from now on, my life or death has nothing to do with the Su family. All shares under my name. Shares will transfer to Su Yao." Hearing this, my father's eyes lit up. The Su family group is preparing to go public. My grandfather allocated me 5% of the shares before passing away. They've wanted them back for ages. "You're saying this yourself." My father, worried I'd renege, called the lawyer to draft a severance agreement. He slammed the property deeds on the table. "Sign it. Crawl to Su family's door. I won't let you in." I laughed at the agreement. In 3 months, during the apocalypse, those 5% shares wouldn't be worth a pack of instant noodles. Signing papers, I pointed at a dusty land deed among property certificates. "Forget shares and the mansion. I want the hot spring villa in the suburbs." "That haunted place?" My mother shrieked. "That property's been abandoned for over a decade, and rumor has it, it's haunted." "Why do you want it?" "Because I feel so." I slid the agreement across the table. "No villa, no deal. And don't think about give it to her." My father tossed me the deed. "That worthless land can rot in your hands. And don't come crying to us later." Took the deed in agreement, signed my name, left a fingerprint. Staring at the red mark, I smiled. This is the city's natural geothermal hot spring, a refuge in the apocalypse's bitter cold. Now, the ones begging for help will be you. Stepping out of the hospital, glaring sunlight made me dizzy. I couldn't rest. I clutched the warm jade pendant on my chest. When my blood seeped into it in the ward, something felt unusual. I locked myself in a restroom. Buzz, the world spun, pulling my consciousness into a vast, hazy space. When the scene before me became clear, despite bracing myself, I gasped in shock. It was an endless, still space. What widened my disbelief was the piles of supplies at the center. This treasure was passed down by the Su family. On the left, stacked gold bars gleamed with luster in the dim space, weighing hundreds of tons. On the right, ancient granaries, sealed with stickers, opened to reveal golden rice and wheat. Due to the stillness, they remained dry and full as when harvested. Rows of red wooden chests followed, filled with silk, paintings. I'm rich! This jade pendant hung around my neck in my past life. I never discovered its secret until I died. My heart's blood and rebirth grievance fully activated it. With this golden food, surviving the apocalypse is assured. I could build a business empire in a frozen hell. Ring ring, the ringtone pulled me back to reality. On the screen, Su Yao flashed. I sneered, answered the call. Sis, why are you in a rush? Su Yao's smug voice followed. Brother Gucheng is hosting a party at Victoria Hotel to celebrate me receiving shares. You should come. Though you're no longer with the Su family, have a good meal. Street food awaits you. I could imagine her gloating expression. I won't be attending the celebration, I replied calmly, a cruel smile on my lips. But Su Yao, eat while you can. Your good days won't last. I hung up, blocked her, and checked my bank balance. 3,500 yuan. It's all I have. Cashing gold from my stash takes time. I lack time. I must get quick cash and stockpile supplies. I reached into my bag for limited edition Hermes crocodile leather bags taken from the Su family. And the $1 million Patek Philippe on my wrist, gifted by the Su family for appearances. But now, all I see it as is cash. I put on a mask, sunglasses, flagged a cab. Take me to the largest luxury resale store. Outside the window, the city bustled, people rushing to pay mortgages and car loans, unaware this would become hell in 3 months. I will be sole survivor, ruler of all. I entered the luxury resale store with Hermes Birkin bags and diamond-encrusted watches. The manager's eyes popped. Turn these into cash, instant bank transfers only. I said the price could be 10% lower and slammed everything on the counter. The manager couldn't pass up the opportunity. He arranged appraisals and transfers. Seeing 8 million added to my account, I pulled out my phone and tapped into loan apps. I kept good credit to uphold the Su family name. Now, those titles are worthless. I clicked apply and maxed every limit. The world's ending anyway. If I don't take this money, who will? Repay it in the next life. In half a day, I raked in 5 million. Holding 13 million in cash, I called the largest grain supplier, 200 tons of Wuchang rice and 100 tons of flour. Delivering now to Hot Spring Villa in a rented mini truck to inspect goods. A red Ferrari blocked my path. The window rolled down, revealing Su Yao's made-up face. Next to her was my ex-fiancé, Gucheng. Su Yao covered her mouth and said, "Isn't this my sister? I heard you sold your dowry to renovate that haunted house. Have you lost your mind?" Gucheng looked equally disdainful. Su ran, "You look like a junk collector. Glad we called off the engagement, or I'd be ashamed." I gripped the steering wheel, glaring at lovebirds doomed to freeze, a twisted smile forming. "Just hope you won't end up kneeling at my door, begging me to let you in." Gucheng cursed, lunatic, and sped off. I sneered and resumed stockpiling. At the villa, I stored the delivered rice and flour in my space. Watching the warehouse fill gave a deep sense of satisfaction. But it wasn't enough. In a freezing post-apocalypse, calories are vital. I went to a food plant and slaughterhouse. 5,000 boxes of spicy hot pots and spicy chocolate. Taking all their liquor, high alcohol white, 1,000 cases. Hard currency in the apocalypse. Pork, beef, lamb, I'll take whatever you give me. The bosses see me as a fortune. Cash on the spot, no nonsense. One request. After storing supplies in stasis space, I contacted a coal mine owner. No fuel means death. 500 tons of smokeless coal. Seeing the coal mound in the backyard eased me. As I stored the last piece, I looked up. A dark red streak flashed across the sky, a sign of a solar flare blackout. I checked the countdown on my phone. Just 1 week left until the extreme cold begins. I spent my last cent turning my haunted house into a Noah's Ark for the apocalypse. Construction teams worked non-stop. They followed my plans to the letter. Out went the drafty wooden windows, replaced with bank vault-grade reinforced glass with triple vacuum insulation. Even the door is a half-meter thick alloy blast-proof, impervious to explosives. Full house underfloor heating. The workers joked as they toiled, "There's a hot spring in the mountain, and you're adding floor heating? Running a sauna?" I told them to optimize the geothermal circulation system urgently. This hot spring is my unlimited heat energy source. To prevent break-ins like my previous life, I installed high-voltage wires on 4-meter walls, saying they were for wild boars. Once construction finished, a mysterious package arrived. I opened the box and found high-poundage compound bows. along with 10 cases of carbon steel arrows. Firearms are chaotic. These silent harvesters rule the apocalypse. I pulled back the bowstring. Anyone who dares intrude, I'll turn them into a pincushion. It's the final day of the apocalypse countdown. Temperature has risen to 35 degrees, and the air feels stifling and oppressive. The last calm before the storm. Stayed in my air-conditioned room, finishing patch-up prep. I opened the food delivery app and ordered milk tea, full sugar, no ice, 100 cups. Family buckets from KFC, 50 sets. Beijing roast duck, 20. Spicy garlic crayfish, 100 pounds each. Delivery drivers unloaded at the villa, and I stored it all in my space. 100 years from now, these will be steaming hot. Meanwhile, on social media, Suyao is showing off. The Su family villa is lit. They're hosting a pool party with champagne and seafood tables. Caption, some feed mosquitoes in the countryside while we live the high life. I liked your post. Enjoy it, it's your last supper. When the clock strikes midnight. The stifling heat outside became a howling gale. In 10 minutes, the temperature dropped from 35 degrees Celsius to minus 10 degrees Celsius. The city was instantly buried under snow. Extreme cold arrived. Temperature dropped below minus 40 degrees Celsius, crippling the city's power grid and plunging it into lifeless silence. The Su family's prideful luxury villa, with its massive floor-to-ceiling windows and poor insulation, turned into a giant freezer in seconds. The Su family, partying in swimsuits, froze and scrambled for warm clothing. Meanwhile, at the hot spring resort, the smokeless coal in the fireplace crackled. The underfloor heating and hot spring recycling system maintained an indoor temperature of 26 degrees Celsius. I lounged on a sofa in my silk nightgown, retrieved a chilled watermelon from my space, and sliced it with a crack. The red flesh, black seeds. Suddenly, my phone screen lit up. It was a video call from Suyao. I answered and deliberately aimed the camera at the watermelon in my hand and the fireplace behind me. Suyao, wrapped in blankets with blue lips, appeared against a dark backdrop. Su ran. Why are you in your nightgown? How do you still have electricity? Suyao screamed in jealousy and panic. Hurry up and drive over to pick us up. We're going to freeze to death. I took a bite of watermelon and looked at her coldly. Pick you up? Dream on. Keep your own blood to warm yourselves. I hung up the phone. The next day, the temperature dropped further, and the Su family villa lost water and electricity. Bother Su's once reliable connections? None could be reached. Suyao, spoiled her whole life, had never endured this. She wanted hot water, but the tap pipes were frozen and burst. The natural gas pipeline stopped due to extreme cold. Wagyu beef and seafood in the fridge were rock-solid frozen. Inedible food forced them to chew biscuits to stave off hunger. I want a hot meal, a hot shower. Suyao screamed under blankets. Meanwhile, I posted a status visible to the Su family. The photo showed a seafood table captioned, "Nothing beats a seafood feast on a snowy day." Suyao saw it and she smashed her phone in rage. My phone rang, Mom calling. I used to feel anxious when she called, afraid I hadn't done enough. But now, I found it ridiculous. My mom's tearful voice came through. Su ran. You're ungrateful. Your sister is freezing, and you're eating seafood? Since I played a recording. The audio was taken from my memories after Rebirth, capturing our past. It was from the day in my previous life when they drained my blood. Take more. Your sister's health means warm feet. My mom's tone reverberated in the night silence. Clear and harsh. On the other end of the line, it went silent. My mom was stunned, unable to understand what was happening. You heard that? I said coldly. Trying to guilt-trip me? Spare me. I blocked her number. Shortly after, Gu Qing messaged me. That scumbag, smarter than the Su family, skipped force and tried sweet-talking, Xiaoran. I know you're still mad at me, but I've always cared for you. If you let me stay at the villa, I won't cancel our engagement. I felt so disgusted I almost threw up the hot pot I'd eaten. A good life? With you? I walked to the window, grabbed my bow, and snapped a photo of the snowy ground. In the picture, the black bow shimmered, the arrowhead sharp. I hit send with the caption, "Show up, and I'll turn you into a porcupine with arrows." My villa could use ice sculpture guards. Gu Chang's side showed the other party is typing, but no message came through. Coward. On the third day of extreme cold, order began collapsing. A few villagers at the mountain's foot, who usually seemed decent. Desperate from the freezing cold, they brought hose and iron rods, climbing the villa's walls to steal coal. That girl lives alone. She can't guard all that stuff. Climb in. If we take her coal, we'll be warm. I sat in the surveillance room, watching figures on the screen, holding hot coffee, face emotionless, as someone's hand touched the barbed wire fence. Zzzzz, a blue arc of electricity lit up. Ah! A piercing scream shattered the night. The man convulsed. Flung away by high voltage, motionless in the snow. The rest fled in fear, rolling and crawling. I sipped coffee, gaze cold. I won't be a saint, whoever crosses the line meets this fate. The 7th day of extreme cold. The Su family's villa had run out of food. No electricity, fire, or food. Hunger and cold gnawed at their nerves. Father Su looked at the room full of expensive mahogany furniture, treasures he had spent tens of millions collecting. In -50-degree weather, those things are worse than rotten wood. Burn them, my father growled, eyes bloodshot. Chop up the Ming Dynasty armchair. Use it for firewood. Dad, it's your favorite. Yao intervened. My father slapped her away. What's the point of a chair when we're dying? Flames rose in the fireplace, trading millions for moments of warmth. The family huddled around the pitiful fire, wolfing down their last piece of moldy biscuit. Meanwhile, I was in the Mountain Villa home theater, wrapped in a cashmere blanket, watching a comedy. Egg tarts and hot milk were on the coffee table. Xiao curled up beside the now one-legged armchair, clutching a cup of warm water, barely boiled from melted snow, mixed with dust. Dad, Mom, we can't sit here waiting to die. Xiao looked up, her eyes gleaming with intent. That bitch Su Ran has supplies. She took the family money. That villa's a giant warehouse. Su father and Su mother exchanged a look, their fear of my ruthless actions. The villa has electric fences. Mother hesitated, recalling villagers who got electrocuted. We're her biological parents. She won't kill us. Su Yao gritted her teeth. Besides, Brother Guqing has a car. Let's drive in. After the gate, those supplies are ours. Gu Cheng's eyes lit up. He's been freezing like a dog lately. He'll do anything to survive. I know Su Ran well. Tough talk, soft-hearted. If we look like we're freezing, she'll open the door. Su Yao sneered, even if she doesn't. We'll camp at her doorstep to show the world how she's torturing her parents. Let's do it! Gu Cheng's old SUV became their last hope. The four squeezed into the car. It shielded them from cold wind. The engine roared through thick snow towards the hot spring resort. Faster! Hurry up! Xiao demanded a hot meal, her greedy eyes shining, about a kilometer from the resort. A massive snow pit blocked the road. The SUV's undercarriage hit and the wheels spun. Despite hitting the gas, the vehicle stayed stuck. Damn it! Guqing cursed, climbing out to check. Engine noise echoed in the distance. Vroom vroom, a snowmobile sped toward them. The rider, armored with goggles, was a figure Su Ran. Stop her! Guqing waved frantically. Stop the vehicle! Help us! I stared at those clowns, not slowing down. In fact, I floored the gas pedal. The tank treads churned icy slush, sending a wave crashing into their faces. Ugh. Xiao got snow in their mouth, looking embarrassed. I drifted past them, leaving smelly exhaust in a mocking silhouette. Their car broke down, but greed drove them to hike to the villa gates. Greed only got them to the crackling electric fence with blue lightning arcs. The shut alloy doors. Su Yao and others were cold, furious. Su Ran, get out! Su Ran's father banged on the metal doors, shouting, I'm your dad. Open up! Su Ran's mom cried, Ranner, we're your... Sitting in the surveillance room, I smirked coldly while watching the scene unfold. I pressed the PA button, and my voice echoed through the entire snowy field via the speakers at the gate, shaking snow loose from the trees. Trespassing has consequences. This isn't Su family property, and I'm not your daughter. Get lost! Ungrateful brat! Su Ran's father yelled, grabbing a stone to hurl at the gate. The villa is... I'm taking it back! Oh, don't blame me for what happens. I pressed a button, and water shot out from nozzles above the gate. Scalding hot spring water hit -50 degrees air, cooled instantly, didn't freeze, but soaked us. SSSSS, the water jet hit Su Yao and Guqing. Ah, hot, no, cold, so cold, Su Yao yelled, rolling in the snow. Moments ago, it was steaming hot spring water. The next second, it sucked away all heat from their bodies. The soaked jackets froze into stiff ice shells, clinging to their skin. Guqing turned pale, teeth chattering, saying run, run. Su's parents, though splashed, weren't hit directly. They were scared witless. Su Ran's lost it. She's going to kill us. The four huddled, stumbling and crawling away. The SUV stuck in the snowbank became their only shelter. I poured a glass of red wine, watching their panicked retreat on surveillance, swirling my glass. This is the beginning. I was in high spirits. I immersed my consciousness into the space and checked the seeds I had planted. The black soil in the space felt magical. The bok choy seeds planted yesterday sprouted tender green leaves today in this frozen wasteland. I could have endless fresh vegetables. Exhilarating. I picked bok choy, vibrant green, more precious than jade. Quickly washed without seasoning, straight into boiling broth. Sweet, crisp, juicy. In the apocalypse. Some people would kill for a piece of moldy bread, yet here I am agonizing over whether to have bok choy or romaine lettuce. Space grows crops, the spiritual spring's water level rose slightly, and a warm current rushed through after drinking. My vision became sharper. It's like a cheat code for leveling up. The space is stocked with supplies, but I can't exhaust. I ventured out, wearing a polar jacket, carrying a composite bow, and a stun baton at my waist. The city looked even worse than I imagined. Once busy streets were now empty, with only a few snow-covered cars revealing their roofs. The shop windows were shattered, looted inside, and I saw a curled-up figure in a corner. An elderly man in tattered clothes held a black stone to his chest, his vacant eyes pleading. "Please, just a bite to eat," he murmured weakly. The space pendant reacted to the stone. It must be material needed to upgrade space. I tossed the cheapest packet of braised beef noodles to him. The old man lunged, ripping it open like a starving wolf. He shoved the seasoning packet into his mouth. "Give me the stone." He hesitated before handing it over. "Thank you, I grabbed the meteor shard and left quickly. This stone, it could unlock space secrets. Inside the Sioux family villa, the soaked and freezing family of four tried drying clothes with a lighter. The cold seeped into their bones. Half a biscuit lay on the table, hidden under Sue's father's shoe insole. "Give it to me. I'm Yao Yao. I'm youngest." Sue Yao reached out to grab it. Smack! Her mother slapped her hand away. "How long will you keep eating? Your dad's passing out from hunger." Sue's mother grabbed the biscuit and shoved it into the father's mouth. Sue Yao stared in disbelief. The mother who said, "I'd give you my heart," was now hitting her over a biscuit? "You're all liars." Sue Yao screamed, bitterness flashing in her eyes. In life and death, hunger exposed family bonds as fragile as paper. The villa community housing the Sioux family had survivors. Security guards at the mountain's foot formed a temporary group with strong-willed residents. The leader was a ruthless man nicknamed Scar, who had been involved in gang life in the past. They had a few fire axes and homemade spears. Scavenging house to house in the neighborhood, the front door of the Sioux villa shook with pounding. "Open up! Routine inspection!" Scar's voice was rough and menacing. Sue's father trembled, knowing he couldn't escape. The door was kicked open. Scar barged in, eyeing Sue Yao. "Wow, she looks nice." Sue's father, desperate to save himself, suddenly shouted to grab attention. "Don't touch us. There's tons of supplies." "Oh, where?" Scar was intrigued. "The Mountain Hot Spring Resort. I've got the key." Sue's father lied. Shifting the trouble onto me, Scar's eyes lit up. "The hot spring resort with the electric fence?" Scar was ruthless, not stupid. "My daughter's up there hoarding food, coal, and a generator." Desperate to survive, Sue's father revealed it all. "If you take me there, I can trick her into opening the door." "Hundreds of tons?" Scar hesitated. The temptation was worth the risk. "Take him." Scar grabbed Sue's father by the collar, dragging him out dead. In the resort surveillance room, my drone hovered over the Sioux family villa, capturing everything perfectly. What a dad! I let out a cold laugh, excited instead of panicked. "If you're eager to die, I'll oblige." Scar's crew has brute strength but lacks brains. I set the manor gate's electronic lock to ajar. "It's been tampered with." I shut down the perimeter's electric fence to make it appear our defenses failed. But on the path leading to the main building, I placed rows of animal traps, ones designed for large beasts. Traps were painted black, buried under snow, and invisible. Took barrels of cooking oil and poured it over stairs. At -50 degrees, the oil turned sticky and slippery, a natural ice rink. After setting up, I sat on the second-floor balcony. Half an hour later, Scar arrived at the manor gate, pressing Mr. Sue and leading a dozen armed men. Seeing the open gate and disabled electric fence, Mr. Sue shouted excitedly, "The supplies are mine. All mine." The group charged in like rabid dogs. Snap! Scar, at the front, let out a blood-curdling scream and collapsed. A giant trap clamped on his leg, biting deep into flesh. Blood stained the snow red. Ah! It's an ambush! The people behind failed to break in time, tumbling into traps or slipping on the oiled steps. Whoosh! A black arrow tore through the air, piercing a thug's thigh as he raised his axe to smash the door. I stood on the balcony and warned, "Take another step, and the next shot goes through their head." The mob fell into chaos. In freezing weather, injury meant death. Scarface clutched his mangled leg, wailing in the snow. His cries weakened, yet lost. I drew my bow again. The rest, terrified, fled without helping their leader. Dropping weapons, Sue's father was so scared, he wet himself. He scrambled through the snow, crawling and tumbling, afraid I'd shoot him. I didn't kill them, only watched coldly as the injured struggled. Within 10 minutes, Scarface's voice faded. He became a lifelike ice sculpture, his face frozen with greed and terror. I had them toss ice sculptures outside the gates. Then, we put up a wooden sign at the entrance, red-painted with 8 bold words. "Beware of vicious dogs. Trespassers will die." Scarlet letters against white snow were stark. This battle intimidated every survivor within a 10-mile radius. My hot spring retreat became an untouchable zone. The bitter cold hadn't frozen malice in men's hearts. Unsure how Su Yao got so, she found a weak satellite signal in the Su family villa. Su Yao immediately relied on it. She turned on a backup phone, started a live stream, and smeared dirt on her face, her pale lips quivering. Wrapped in a worn jacket, she wept, "I'm Su Yao. My sister Su Ran took all the life-saving supplies from our family. Locked me and my parents in a powerless villa, enjoying a heated room, feasting on seafood, while her parents starve." Hatred in people's hearts needs an outlet. Thousands of survivors flooded the live stream. The comment section went wild. Does she deserve to live? Track her down, brothers. West Suburb Hot Spring Villa, right? Raid her safe house. Vile women like her deserve to be ripped apart. Su Yao glanced at comments, a smirk appearing on her lips. I observed Su Yao's performance from the surveillance room. I tossed her a 666. Thinking you can win with public opinion? I was way ahead of you. Fingers flew across the keyboard, hacking into her live stream signal. Buzz, the screen glitched, and Su Yao's tear-streaked face vanished. A surveillance video showed 3 days before the apocalypse, the Su family hosting a lavish banquet and discarding seafood. I was eating steamed buns and renovating the villa. Later, after the cold hit, Su's father brought Scarface and thugs to break down the villa's front door. They shouted, "Take the supplies." My voiceover added, "If you're robbing me, say so. Stop pretending to be pitiful." The comment section went silent, then the vibe flipped. Holy crap. This isn't just a little girl, she's got blood-stained buns. Ringing, Su Yao stared at the hateful messages flooding her phone screen, shrieked, and hurled the phone hard against the wall. As online backlash settled, fate dealt another brutal hand. The temperature plunged to -60 degrees Celsius. This wasn't ordinary cold, it was physical and magical annihilation. High-tech polar-grade coats became brittle, steel cracked, and the Su family villa became a desolate, frozen tomb. Su's father and mother huddled under blankets, their teeth chattering. The rosewood furniture was burned to ashes, and now only clothing remained. "Burn this," the mother said, tossing her Hermes Birkin bag into the dying flame. What was once her bragging right now gave off black smoke and a putrid smell. "Is there anything else? Hurry, find something." Su's father tore through the house, trying to rip up floorboards, but the frozen floors were harder than stone, immovable. The flames shrank until they became a wisp of smoke. In the darkness, only the family's panting could be heard. Father Su refused to die. Driven by survival, he dragged frostbitten legs, crawling to the villa's surveillance camera. Thud! He dropped to his knees, forehead hitting icy ground. Blood froze. Xiao ran. Daddy was wrong. Daddy made a huge mistake. "I'm begging, one bite of food. I won't come inside, I'll eat it here at the door. I'm your father. I held you in my arms when you were little." His voice through the intercom reached the house. I held a bowl of congee, watching the screen showing that man groveling like a dog. In my past life, when he drew my blood, his gaze was far more ruthless than now. I pressed the intercom, my voice cold. "Held? Do you mean when you used me as your blood bag? Freeze to death at the door, and I might collect your body to toss it away." Father Su's act failed. Hiding in the corner, Gu Qing could no longer hold back. Knowing I hated the Su family, he thought as a fiancé, he might still have a chance. Father and Mother Su asleep, Gu Qing sneaked to the entrance, held up a note. Su ran. Password to Su family's secret safe. Gold bars and Su Corporation's confidential files are inside. Let me in. If I have to be a dog, I'll give you everything. I stared at Gu Qing. To survive, he even sold out his fiancé's family. Write the password on paper and hold it to the camera, I said. Gu Qing, ecstatic, complied. Noted down the password. Documents worthless, but gold bars still valuable. Good. So, the door? Gu Cheng's face lit with hope. "Scram," I said, turning off the mic. He cursed for half an hour before leaving. Back at the villa, he threw Su Yao out. "It's your fault, Jinx. Su Ran would have married me, and I'd be living in a mansion." Gu Qing channeled rage onto Su Yao, ripping away her down coat. He shoved her into icy wind and snow. To survive. She wandered into a survivor camp, a makeshift shelter in an abandoned garage. It was chaotic and undignified. For half a moldy bun, Su Yao relied on a one-eyed man with yellow teeth, once a high society heiress. Scraping by in garbage. Gnawing a hard bun, she looked up to see my drone overhead. Delivering fresh apples to workers outside, jealousy consumed her like a venomous snake. The disaster outside doesn't concern me. I'm immersed in joy. The meteorite shard I traded from the old beggar, once placed in the space, melted into the black soil. Rumble, the space shook, and a spring bubbled up, a spiritual spring. I drank the sweet spring water, which warmed me and spread through my body. My previously cold, sensitive body suddenly felt warm and full of strength. My vision and hearing improved significantly. I even took off my jacket and stood in 0-degree cold storage wearing one layer, yet didn't feel cold. This spiritual spring is key to evolution. I now have a survival advantage in this frozen apocalypse. By the second month of cold, the world changed. While inspecting the manor's walls, I noticed blue vines growing at the corner, crystal clear like ice sculptures but writhing. A sparrow landed on the vine, which wrapped around it. Crack! In 1 second, sparrow turned into ice shards, its body heat drained. Ice vines absorb heat to survive and spread. They'll ruin the manor's heating system. Alarmed, I grabbed a flamethrower to burn them away. The flames failed, so I used spiritual spring water from my space and splashed it. Sizzle sizzle, arrogant ice vines reacted like hit by acid, twisting, withering, and turning into a puddle of blue liquid. The spiritual spring water restrains mutated plants. Found a new trump card. To get more fuel, I took my modified bulletproof car to a city gas station. On the way, thugs surrounded a broken-down vehicle. Hand over the food. That old guy looks tender. What if we? An elderly man and 2 young assistants, holding strange instruments, tried to fend off attackers. That old man, Professor Zhang, he developed the artificial mini-sun heating system in a past life, which prolonged human civilization. He cannot die here. I turned the wheel, drifting the car to block the thug's path. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 carbon arrows pierced the ringleader's knees. Get lost! I held up my compound bow. Driving an advanced car, the thugs panicked, dragging their wounded leader as they fled. Professor Zhang was grateful, but his health was in terrible. His assistants were frostbitten. Come with me. I took them to the hot spring villa but didn't let them enter the core living area. They were placed in worker housing on the outskirts. It's not as warm as the main building but stays above freezing, with hot water and food for those nearly frozen to death. This place is paradise. Is this a geothermal circulation system? Professor Zhang stared at the pipes on my wall. Brilliant design. Efficiency could improve by 30%. Smiled. I knew saving him was right. Professor, help me improve the energy system, and you'll have food and warmth here. Professor Zhang teared up and exclaimed. No problem. From now on, my life belongs to Ms. Su. With Professor Zhang and his team joining us, the estate's defense and energy systems advanced greatly. By the 3rd month of extreme cold, the Su family mansion became an icy tomb. All the furniture, books, and floorboards were burned. Su's father and mother curled in a corner, stripped of the dignity they had as a wealthy couple. Covered in stench and frostbite, hunger is more terrifying than cold. It can turn people into food. Shivering, Su's father pulled a piece of moldy, hardened bread from his coat, hidden yesterday while Su's mother slept. As he brought it to his lips, skeletal hands gripped his wrist. Give it to me. Su's mother, eyes bloodshot, lunged at him, biting and clawing. Stay back. I found it. Su's father kicked her in the stomach, but the strike had little force. The two wrestled on the floor at -60 degrees. Su's mother dug her nails into his flesh as he clutched her neck. All for moldy bread even pigs wouldn't touch. This couple now wanted to tear each other apart. Ugh, the mother's eyes rolled back as her limbs stopped struggling. Su's father loosened his grip, panting. As he reached for the bread, sharp chest pain struck. In her final moments, Su's mother gripped a shard of porcelain lodged in Su's heart. Su's father collapsed beside his wife's corpse, eyes wide in shock. The moldy bread rolled aside, uneaten. The next morning, Su Yao returned to the villa after failing to survive in the camp. The one-eyed man was killed by a new group, forcing her to return. Pushing the door open, the stench of death hit her. She stood frozen, eyes on the entangled corpses on the floor, her parents, once seen as cash cows and protectors. She should have been wailing, devastated, but she wasn't. Her murky eyes showed no flicker of emotion. She approached the bodies, her gaze locking onto the intact down jacket her mother wore, the only warm clothing left in the house. Dead is better. At least they're not cold anymore, Su Yao murmured. She began peeling clothes off her mother. The corpse was frozen, making removal difficult. She tore at it, snapping off the corpse's arm. Putting on the death-reeking down jacket, Su Yao picked up the blood-stained bread and stuffed it into her mouth. A sinister smile appeared on her face. 100 kilometers away at the 3rd refuge construction site, an underground city was being built, requiring a workforce. Gu Cheng, drafted into the pioneer team, realized it was slavery, not refuge. At -60 degrees, the wind cut like knives. Gu Cheng, in a thin work uniform with iron chains on his feet, shoveled through the icy ground. Move faster! The overseer's whip cracked down mercilessly. I can't go on. Gu Cheng collapsed to his knees. Snot and tears streaming, his frostbitten hands showed white bones. He recalled months earlier, sitting in a luxury car, holding Su Yao. Mocking Su Ran for foolishly living in a haunted house. If he treated Su Ran better, he might be by a warm fireplace with hot soup. Regret gnawed at his heart. Get up! Stop playing dead! The overseer kicked him. Gu Cheng faltered. Collapsing, his grip stayed firm on a voided marriage agreement. Inside the hot springs villa, warmth filled the air. Professor Zhang tuned a communications device. As static crackled, a clear signal came through. South China District's first underground city, respond. Authorities made contact. A middle-aged man appeared on screen. Seeing the lush greenhouse behind Professor Zhang through the camera, his face showed sheer disbelief. You're alive. You've tackled extreme cold planting technology? Professor Zhang adjusted his glasses and pointed at me. Thanks to Miss Su, she provided special seeds and a stable environment. Authorities' attitude became enthusiastic. In the apocalypse, food is survival. Planting technology means a future. On behalf of authorities, I formally invite you to join the underground city. We offer high-level treatment. In this frozen world, we need your expertise. I sat on the sofa, swirling a glass of red wine and watched the screen. Join the authorities? Be bound by them? That's not why I was reborn. I value freedom too much to be restrained. I declined the offer. Disappointed, the official tried to convince me, Miss Su, the outside world is dangerous. Only the underground city is safe. I won't join it to collaborate with you. Provide seeds for cold-resistant crops and arrange Professor Zhang's remote guidance for building greenhouses. What do you want? The smart man asked. I need heavy defense materials, I replied, gesturing. Reinforced explosion-proof alloy plates, military-grade radar systems, and materials for liquid nitrogen freeze cannons. He fell silent. All were regulated. When survival's at stake, rules bend. Deal. 3 days later, a helicopter braved the snowstorm to land on the mountain estate's helipad. I handed over a box of seeds soaked in the spiritual spring in exchange for fully armed defense equipment. This deal turned my hot spring estate into an impenetrable war fortress. Prosperity never goes unnoticed. The estate's abundance drew attention from authorities and predators. An extremist group, Black Skull, targeted us. A marauder army of fugitives, thugs, and outlaws, lacking heavy weaponry. They acquired homemade explosives and siege vehicles through the black market. Boss, that woman has plenty of food and heating. A scarred man reported to his leader. Beside him stood a venom-eyed woman, Su Yao. I know that place's weakness. Su Yao's hoarse voice roared like a demon. Blow up the drainage side and we'll get in. The leader stared at the distant, brightly lit estate, a greedy glint flashing in his eyes. Order! Move out! We're staying in the greenhouse and using her bed. In the dark of night. Hundreds of shadows crept toward the manor through the blizzard. Alert! Multiple unidentified heat sources approaching. The radar system blared an ear-piercing alarm. I sprang out of bed and rushed into the surveillance room. On the screens, monitors showed red dots swarming from all directions. Boom! A thunderous explosion echoed as the manor gate rattled under explosive impact. Though the blast-resistant door held, the force shook dust loose. Su ran. Get out and meet your end, came the arrogant shouts outside. Professor Zhang and technicians turned pale. Miss Su, too many of them with explosives. What do we do? I stared at the screens. Put on my tactical vest, a bloodthirsty grin on my lips. Too many? Perfect. Time to test new. I pressed the red button at the console, a liquid nitrogen defense system built with official supplies. Hidden vents on the manor's walls opened. Hiss! A thick white mist burst out. It was liquid nitrogen at -321 degrees Fahrenheit. The dozens of attackers at the front didn't have time to scream before they froze in place, locked in charging stances, transformed into ice sculptures. The power of liquid nitrogen stunned them, forcing the black skeleton's men to retreat. Don't be scared! It's limited! Attack from the side! Su Yao screamed. She knew this place well. Leading death warriors, she avoided nitrogen jets and found a drainage channel from old renovations. Boom! The iron grate was blasted open. Bloody, Su Yao held a poisoned dagger, crawling in first. Su ran. I'm going to kill you! She stormed into the hall to see me on the staircase. Her grudges and anger exploded as Su Yao burst forth with speed. Ignoring surrounding alarms, she charged at me, face twisted with hatred, far from the privileged heiress she once was. Die! Everything you have should have been mine. The dagger gleamed blue under the light, aimed at my heart. I remained calm amid her desperate attack. Strengthened by spirit spring water, her movements seemed slow. I sidestepped, dodged her strike, and raised my leg. Landing a heavy kick to her abdomen, bang, Su Yao screamed as her body flew back like a broken kite. Right behind her was the underground cold storage room I had intentionally opened to fend off intruders, a place used to store whole slabs of pork, where the temperature was -80 degrees Celsius. Su Yao crashed into the cold storage. Looking down at her struggling, Su ran. Please pull me up. I don't want to die. Su Yao saw the iron door slowly close, her face showing fear. Now you remember I'm your sister? I pressed the lock button blankly. You can enjoy the cold like your parents. With a click, the lock engaged, silencing Su Yao's screams. Her fate was a painful freezing process. With Su Yao dead, the gang lost its leader. Using liquid nitrogen spray and an electrified fence, the Black Skull organization lost half their dead and fled in disarray. This battle, it cemented the Spa Estate's infamous reputation. Factions within hundreds of miles now knew of a woman here more terrifying than the devil. Armed with weapons freezing people to dust. No one targeted the estate again. By morning, the storm ceased. I had the corpses outside cleaned up. Sunshine hit the snowy ground, reflecting bright light. Professor Zhang led a team inspecting the walls. Workers picked tomatoes in the greenhouse. Despite last night's battle, the estate didn't feel desolate. It buzzed with survival's vitality. From the terrace, I gazed at the vast white expanse in the distance. Enemies are dealt with. Gu Cheng and Su Yao from the Su family are past, no longer living for revenge. In this frozen post-apocalyptic world, I'll build a new order and live a brilliant life. Time flies, it's the second new year after the apocalypse, compared to last year's misery and bloodshed. This year, the hot spring resort is filled with warmth and life. Outside, the wind howls with heavy snowflakes, and temperatures hover around -60 degrees. In the banquet hall, the crystal chandelier glows yellow. 4 round tables are pushed together, covered with seeds, candies, and fruits. Professor Zhang and young technicians knead dough, grinning like kids. My stoic head bodyguard, Lu Jing, is clumsily chopping meat stuffing. Miss Su, pork is so fresh. Almost forgot what pork tastes like. A female worker, wiping tears and wrapping dumplings, said with red eyes. I smiled and pulled out chives from my space. We'll have enough pork and chive dumplings for everyone. As dumplings were placed on the table, everyone fell silent. The aroma of flour mixed with meat was a luxury. I raised my glass, looked at these kind, hardworking people, and softly said, Happy New Year. From now on, every year, everyone had dumplings. To the city lord, tears flowing, they raised their glasses. Outside, the blizzard felt less menacing. We kept a corner of warmth and purity. Once well-fed and rested, work began. After Lunar New Year, I started the greenhouse project. Despite having ample living off supplies wasn't viable, the estate needed to be self-sufficient. Turning it into a beacon of civilization. Using explosion-proof glass from authorities and improved geothermal pipes from Professor Zhang, we built a 5,000 square meter greenhouse in the back hills of the estate. Ordinary seeds had low germination rates in freezing temperatures. I added mystical spring water to the irrigation system. Used modified cold-resistant seeds from space storage. This is a miracle. Half a month later, Professor Zhang observed lush green wheat seedlings sprouting in the greenhouse. He waved his arms excitedly. It's -10 degrees in here, and they're growing. Miss Su, these seeds of yours are divine. The vibrant greenery filled me with accomplishment. These seedlings were not just food, they symbolized oxygen and hope. The greenhouse changed the estate's menu. Besides stored frozen meat, everyone enjoyed fresh lettuce and cucumber salad. And pick red strawberries from the strawberry garden. Word spread, and nearby survivors started to take notice. Looking at the greenery, I felt longing. With the food problem solved, the next focus was energy. Geothermal energy from hot springs is stable, but heating demand rises with greenhouse expansion and population growth. Professor Zhang delivered as using rare metals and equipment, he made a breakthrough in the underground lab. We did it! A prototype for a controllable nuclear fusion heater. Late that night, Professor Zhang, grease-smeared, rushed into my office, holding a report in his hands. With this machine and special fuel provided, Miss Su, we can achieve perpetual energy. I stared at the suitcase-sized device, shocked. Begin production, I ordered decisively. I want the villa and future expansion areas to stay spring-like year-round. 1 week later, the first heater ignited at the central plaza. A wave of heat swept through the villa. Indoors, where thick sweaters were needed, it was now warm enough for short sleeves. This wasn't merely a temperature increase, it marked a civilization leap. With rising productivity, the villa faced manpower shortages. I formed a professional rescue team led by Lu Jing, using thermal armored vehicles for rescue missions in radiation zones. I set a strict rule: the first, rescue kind-hearted people with valuable skills, like doctors, engineers, teachers, and skilled workers. Second, prioritize women, children. Third, criminals or violent individuals, even freezing to death, must not be let in. Found a school teacher in West Ruins with 7 orphans, survived burning books. Lu Jing reported over the radio, choked with emotion. Bring them back, I said. Prepare hot milk and new clothes for the kids. When those 7 skinny, frostbitten children were carried into the warm hall and saw the bread and milk on the table, they rubbed their eyes in disbelief. Thinking they arrived in heaven, the young teacher knelt before me, crying, Thank you for giving these children a chance to live. Helped her up and saw kids devouring food. As long as you're alive, there's hope. This is your home now. Talented people are the most valuable The rescued people became loyal builders. By the 3rd winter of the apocalypse, the hot spring resort was insufficient. Using the terrain and unlimited energy, I decided to expand. Using the resort as the core, I planned to extend 5 kilometers to form an outer city named Ran Winter City. The name reflects bringing life to winter and ties to my name. The project was huge, but with food for workers, many survivors volunteered after hearing the news. They built high walls of permafrost, steel, and stacked cars as defenses. Winter City is divided into 3 zones: the core zone, where my team and I live, with high security and good living conditions. The industrial zone handles farming, livestock, and equipment maintenance. The residential zone offers central heating, clean water, and 2 meals daily, important in a post-apocalyptic world. Standing on newly built city walls, looking down at the brightly lit city below, I felt deeply moved. The girl who once focused on survival is now a leader of thousands. Every decision determines life or death. City Lord. Latest census report, Lu Xing said, handing me a document. The city's permanent population has reached 3,200. Expand Winter City into a beacon during this apocalypse. More people bring more complications, especially in the early days of Winter City. Incidents of theft, fights, and attempts to incite strikes for equal distribution of resources. I showed no mercy. This is not a charity or a utopia. In a citywide broadcast, I announced the Winter Code first. No infighting, killers face death, thieves lose a finger in exile. Work earns rewards, no freeloaders. Want better food? Work, rescue, or build. Third. The city lord holds absolute authority and judge the troublemaker who incited chaos. Zhao Chang, a strength-type mutant, bullied the weak on the construction site and tried leading raids into the core warehouse. Su ran. Why hog all the supplies? You live in a villa while we're stuck in shacks. Zhao Chang yelled as he was dragged onto the judgment platform. I looked at him and calmly said, I built the city, the food is mine. Don't like it? Leave. Zhao Chang tried to resist. Lu Xing kicked him, shattering his knee, and threw him out of the city gates. The cold snapped him back to reality. He begged for mercy at the gate, but I didn't look back. From that day, order in Randong City became clear. Everyone knew warmth was a gift, not a given. Year 5 of the apocalypse. The weather technician suddenly burst into my office. Forgetting to knock. City Lord, the temperature is rising. I stood, staring at the data curve. The 0.5 degree rise was consistent, a stable upward trend. Earth, frozen for 5 years, was finally awakening. The Great Ice Age's turning point had come, and the city erupted in celebration. People flooded the streets. Despite the cold wind, tears of joy streamed down faces. Is it over? Lu Xing watched the cheering crowd. Not yet. I analyzed, temperature will return to 0 in 3 to 5 years, but the hardest days are behind us. Ordered a 3-day citywide feast, brought out stored fireworks. As sparks exploded in the night sky, everyone cheered. Fireworks symbolized humanity's unyielding spirit. We survived. Rising temperatures brought opportunities. Cities once buried under ice. Areas became accessible again. I led a team to return to the urban center. This time, we weren't searching for food. We pursued something more crucial, knowledge. Libraries, data centers, hospital archives, once dismissed in the apocalypse. Foundations for rebuilding civilization. Our convoy drove into the former CBD. The towering skyscrapers were mostly crumbled ruins. Their glass facades swaying in the wind. We pried open underground storage of the city library. Many books were damp and moldy from low temperatures. Professional books remained intact. Hurry! Move the medical books, engineering blueprints. I directed the team. Passing a luxury store, I saw glimmering bags and jewelry. I felt nothing. I used to obsess over trading everything for these. They're worthless stones. Knowledge and skills are treasures that last forever. This time, brought back 10 truckloads of books and hard drives. Storing them felt more reassuring than stockpiling 10,000 boxes of hot pot supplies. The convoy passed a wealthy neighborhood where the Su family villa once stood. I impulsively told the convoy to stop. Wait here for me. I'll be back in a bit. Alone, I stepped onto the snow and walked toward the villa, where grievances with the Su family were buried. The villa collapsed in half, leaving crumbled walls and debris. Among the ruins, I spotted a torn corner of a down jacket under shattered bricks. It was the one Su Yao wore before dying, stained with Su mother's blood. Now, all buried under ice and snow, desolate. I expected anger, relief, or sadness, but felt nothing, like staring at an unfamiliar roadside rock. Or a dead wildflower. The hated Su family, nightmares that kept me awake. Facing time and survival. They all seemed insignificant. It's over, I exhaled into the freezing air and left without looking back. The lights of winter-stained city await me. As the city grows, we can no longer stay isolated. The official's grand dungeon opened a transportation route to the surface. The first caravan has arrived at winter-stained city. Seeing the greenhouses in our city and the cheeks of the children, the representative's shock was evident. Mayor Su, living standards are better than the dungeons, they said with a wry smile. Dungeons are safe but overcrowded and resource scarce. Most survive on synthetic food from cockroaches and worms. But here, fresh bok choy and strawberries. At the negotiation table, I held the upper hand. I want crystal cores and heavy industrial equipment. What can we offer? Fresh produce, cold-resistant seeds. I smiled, presenting the samples. We reached a long-term trade agreement. Winterstain City became a Grade A agricultural partner zone. Monthly shipments of industrial materials and crystal cores followed. An official armored convoy took our vegetables. I became the wealthiest businesswoman in the post-apocalypse. Always silently guarding me was Liu Zhang, my security chief. For 5 years, he stayed quiet but acted in every crisis. He stood before me. When Scar struck, he took an axe for me. When Black Skull attacked, he led a suicide squad to defend the gate. I stepped out of the office and saw Liu Zhang in the snow. He stubbed out his cigarette and stood straight. Mayor. It's not work hours. Call me by my name. I tightened my coat. Liu Zhang went silent and took out a small box from his pocket. For you, he said. Inside was a ring made from mutated beast bone with a blue core embedded. Though rough, it looked beautiful under the moonlight. This is from the last mission. It reminded me of your eyes. This 6 feet 1 inch man, his ears turned red. I'm not worthy of you. I just want you to know. I'll always stand by you. Seeing his demeanor, I felt the ice in my heart melt slightly. A bond pure and unconditional is rare. I picked up the ring, slid it onto my index finger, and gave it a shake. Bits. From now on. Stop standing there and come inside for tea. Liu Zhang's head shot up, eyes shining with delight. The 7th year of the apocalypse, temperatures rose to -20 degrees. For humans adapted to cold, it felt like spring. That day, Professor Zhang invited me to the greenhouse. Miss Su, look! At the center, the peach tree I had watered with spiritual spring water. Pink petals among green leaves, the first bloom since the extreme cold began. The first flower to bloom on Earth. News spread, causing an uproar in the city. People lined up at the greenhouse to glimpse the pink bloom. Many children born during the apocalypse had never seen flowers. They asked their mothers, did a cloud fall from the sky? This is hope, I said, caressing the petals. Winter will pass, and spring will come. This flower represents Earth's ecosystem revival. I sent a photo to the underground city. The photo made the front page of the city's newspaper with a 5-word headline. A miracle of life. Countless people underground saw this photo and wept. It showed we were going to make it. 3 years passed, temperatures reached 0, and ice melted, revealing long-lost black soil. On this day, radio channels broadcast, "This is the Earth United Government. We announce a monumental message to humanity." Led by Professor Zhang Mingyuan's team, with Winter City's technical support, the Artificial Sun Atmospheric Reconstruction Project has succeeded. Restoring surface sunlight, deafening cheers erupted. Meanwhile, in Winter City Square, I stood with Professor Zhang, gazing at thick gray clouds that blocked sunlight for 10 years. Torn apart by a golden beam, a ray of sunlight breaks through clouds, shining on Earth. The light is dazzling. Warmth everywhere, cheering, embracing, crying. Liu Zhang grips my hand, strong and warm. We did it. Professor Zhang's face is tearful. Miss Su, you saved me and this technology. I smile, looking up at the sky. We survived. Sunlight returns, ice and snow melt, and reconstruction is underway. Yandong City, with intact agricultural systems and industrial equipment, the economic center of the new world. I enter the space alone. Supplies from 10 years ago are now mostly gone. The remaining stock could sustain me for lifetimes. Seeing the untouched seed vaults, I made a decision. The next day, gathered high-ranking officials, ordered, open warehouse number 3. As the doors swung open, revealing tons of seeds, people were stunned. Distribute these to surrounding survivor settlements. No matter their background or wealth, those willing to farm get them free. Lord Governor, but these are treasures. Someone hesitated. The apocalypse is over, I said, gazing at the reviving land. Living well is no skill, making land grow food again is the real ability. True victory was seeing awe in everyone's eyes. 15 years later, Frostfall City is a modern metropolis with 100,000 people. Skyscrapers rise, light rail trains weave through flowers, and the hot spring resort remains unchanged. Now it's surrounded by hills with blooming wildflowers. Today is my birthday. The house is bustling with joy. Professor Zhang, though his hair is white, telling stories from the past. Liu Zhang, once a battle-hardened warrior, now cooks expertly in the kitchen. The Su family's troubles are now forgotten history. I stepped onto the balcony, removing the protective suit worn for a decade. Slipping into a floral dress, a breeze brushed by with earthy floral scents. Warm sunlight embraced me. No more frostbite, just a tender caress. I didn't freeze in a basement or serve as blood supply. I survived and became a legend. Children's laughter echoed. Lu Jing called me for dinner. I turned back, saw the warm glow of the house and lover's smiling face. A smile curved on my lips. Spring has come, life is tranquil. I'm truly the winner.